Maintenance man back at Mr. Dog Poop Studios, and today Mr. Dog Poop wants me to repair his Cucoloris. This is a Matthews Cucoloris. It costs around $100 plus shipping and tax. Only problem is, it's seen better days. It's taped together in several places, it's missing chunks, and it's falling apart. So how do we fix it? I'm going to show you how. So I bought a 4x8 sheet of plywood here to rebuild a bunch of the Cucolorises. As you can see, they've seen better days. So this should actually make this window frame, this 28 by 48, this, and we'll have enough to make a custom one here. What I need to do is take this down and start marking up where to cut it so I can cut it into pieces. If you don't want to cut up a full sheet, you can actually buy pieces this size at Home Depot and Lowe's, and they're already pre-cut. So if you don't have the tools to cut it, you can do that. So this is basically just a small block with a 3/8 inch rod welded to it, 4 holes drilled in it, and attached to a piece of wood. So I made some pieces out of aluminum that use 1/4 by 3 inch plates and then 5/8 inch rod, which will fit into a grip head. And we will use that the same as the Matthews, but we'll put it onto this piece or the window or whatever we want. You don't necessarily have to have a holder. You can just clamp it. This window frame does not have a handle or a holder on it. It can be set up and held however. Window frames are pretty popular as far as creating shadows and lines. You can use wood, you can use cardboard, you can use whatever you want. I like to use materials that if I'm going to do the work, I want it to be around forever. So I'm going to use some plastic sheets. I made aluminum. I put this thing together, cut whatever holes I want in it, and that's going to last me a lifetime. The Matthews Cucoloris made out of wood, it's a little bit lighter, not significantly, but it is going to wear out pretty quickly. And if you bend it or tweak it or throw it in with all your flags, it's probably going to start falling apart. To make the cutouts, I literally used this as a form, and I just kind of moved it around and then used this as a template, which I'm going to show you how to do. So I'm going to come over 24 inches. I want 24. I'm just going to draw a line to cut. Check it on this side, make sure it's 24 inches, which it is, so that line is straight. You'll see this piece is 18 by 24, so we only need to take 18 inches, and we'll use this piece as a custom size. Just measure 18 inches, double check, make sure this is 18, which it is, and then we're going to cut that. So we'll cut that piece off, and then we'll cut this in half. So I've already loosened these up. That has lock nuts on them. There's just 1/4 inch bolts, washers, easy enough to drill a 1/4 inch hole. Here's the Matthews piece. This is steel. This is a little bit lighter, even though it looks a lot bigger. I just like to work with the aluminum. The steel is fine. Having a bigger shaft, I think, would be easier to support. Basically, that's going to go there. When we do the Matthews one, we'll do the same thing. We'll just drill the holes. We'll put this in the right space, drill the holes through there, put the screws back in, and we're going to use this as a form, and we're going to cut out the exact same shapes. It's easier than it looks. We're going to take it outside and cut it with a circular saw. What the fuck? So I kind of screwed up. Should have used a finer blade, didn't even think about it. Went to cut it with my regular saw, and it was a coarse cut. Kind of chopped up the ends. It's not going to affect the usability of it, but would have been a lot prettier. And I guess I was wrong, and plywood is just crap, because I used a fine blade and it tore it up as well. So they're not making plywood the way they used to. That's for sure. I guess I probably should have used a saber saw, and then it would be all crooked. That's why they make beer. So here's our original piece. We're going to use this as a form or a guide and use a router to cut the holes. And then we have a drill to drill these holes out, which should be pretty easy. The router is adjustable and it has a little bearing on the top and then a bit, and it'll cut all the way up to that bearing. So if we use this as a guide, all we have to do is go around in these shapes and it'll cut out the board underneath it. We take our two boards that are basically the same size, take a couple pieces of scrap wood that'll be at the ends. It won't really matter if we cut into this wood, it won't hurt anything, so we're gonna put it up on that wood. See if we can get some clamps on here, hold it down. We want to make sure that it's tight. So where you have areas that are broken out, we don't want to go past that, so you have to be careful. Or you could put some tape on it, like up in these areas, and that'll keep you from going into it. So I'd like to be closer to the edge so that I could clamp this, but since I can't because my wood is too wide, I'm going to go ahead and put this piece over the top and then clamp that down. So that'll hold it down, but again we'll have to flip this around and shift it. So router's very dangerous. 15,000 RPMs. That blade will cut through anything, and if you haven't used it, you need to learn how. Get yourself a dust mask. This is going to make a lot of dust and wood chips in your lungs. Not the best thing. But get yourself a N95 dust mask. We're going to take this and plunge it down in and then move it around through here. This thing is really dangerous. If you've never done this before, turn it off before you lift it out. If you know what you're doing and you can lift it out and put it each one, but if you haven't done it, turn it off and start it again for each hole. But there is your hole cut exactly the same. So we're going to go through and complete the rest of these, flip it around and cut all the holes out. So as you can see, the stuff gets all over. You'd be breathing this in. There's glue and adhesives that they use to keep the plywood together. Not good stuff to breathe. Make sure you get a mask. It'll keep all that stuff out of your lungs. So it's starting to shape up. You can see we're cutting the exact same shapes. You don't have to cut the same. We can also cut this outside corner. So that's also something we want to do, is use the outside radius. We get that nice radius on the corner. And again, don't want to cut into there. Could go a little bit further. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that up a little bit. So while I have this clamped here, I'm going to go ahead and drill out the 4 holes. So we'll flip it around and try to keep it all together. Coming along nicely. Over here I got the board and couldn't go any further. So you see it's exactly the same. It's It's a messy job, and the hardwood burned through the router blade, but we did duplicate this. The plastic, doing it with the plastic is about 100 times easier. It's easier on the equipment, and it'll last longer, and it really didn't cost any more. I think even the beer became a victim of sawdust. Yep, there's sawdust in it. Take our hardware. Yeah, this plywood didn't cut well. I guess we forgot to radius that corner. Now I'll have to clean it up on a disc grinder, disc sander. So there's our old one. There's our new one. Have to clean it up with probably a orbital sander. This plywood is not very good. It was expensive and it wasn't good. And we forgot to cut that corner. I could certainly go back and we'll clean it up on a disc grinder. So this is the rebuilt one. That'll last us for some time. It's not the best work in the world, but the wood was a little bit harder than expected. It kind of burned through one of the router blades, and the outer layer wasn't very nice. So it did crack up a little bit, but still a lot better than what we were working with, and we didn't have to spend $100 on it to get a new one. So if you're going to do it, I really recommend doing it out of plastic. The plastic cuts like butter. It doesn't wear out your tool. It's a lot easier to do. Also, it doesn't make as much of a mess. It doesn't create dust. We made this 24 by 24, and we just used the Matthews as a guide and just kind of moved it around and clamped it in different places to cut the shapes we wanted. So you don't have to try to guide it through, but that's a repaired Matthews. That's one we built. We could also take this down, radius these corners, which is probably a good idea. It's always nice to radius the corners, put a little, instead of having a square sharp edge, it'll keep it from cracking, breaking, and getting stuck on things. You don't need a 12-inch disc grinder. You can use a hand grinder, you can use a hand sander, you can even sand it by hand, or use the router. This one I just need to put holes in, so let me go ahead and finish it. We can compare the two. So this one we set up to put this right here. The smart thing to do would be to clamp it down, but the sun's a pretty bright thing, but you can see the patterns that you can create. You can overlap them, do different things. I definitely prefer this with the aluminum and the plastic. It's more durable. This is gonna fall apart. It was a lot harder to build, a lot harder to work with. Go on, Zorro.com has these pieces. This was 24 by 24. You can get it in 1/4 or 3/16. You can get it in white, you can get it in black. If you're rebuilding this one, just use this piece. If you can't make a piece, use the piece from the Matthews, but I don't like the wood at all. I think it's a bad application. It's stupid when they have materials that will last forever and are more durable and just as cheap, but you can decide. So I've got a bunch more to do for Mr. Dog Poop. First things first, I gotta take this beer in, dump it out, and get one without sawdust. But if you want to know how to make a cucoloris, that's how you do it. Maintenance man here.
Same thing, it's really strong. It's really strong.
I'm not even fucking doing anything.
I don't know. Adjust your mic again. Your wires, adjust it because it is staticky right now.